years. That's good. So what else would you guys like to know?
So, gosh, you're being very humble here. Very humble. That's like a 5-second introduction. I'll fill in a couple of gaps. Marie and I have known each other for basically since I came to the Market Center. I think you came to the Market Center a couple months before me.
Right.
And for many years, it was us in the back room with Kim Hutchins and a couple others that were, just doing our thing every single day. And you've seen the business evolve over time. And now you served on the Agent Leadership Council several times. You've taught I can't even count how many classes in the Market Center and helped tons of agents along the way. So I just want to publicly thank you for that.
You're
We've
welcome.
given enough opportunity to do so. And now you have ultimately partnered with Team Kimberly, and you are their primary listing agent, I believe. So
Right.
What we want to do is we can go a couple different directions. If you want, I think this is probably the way we should do. Maybe you take the floor for a bit and kind of just walk us through your preparation for the listing, walk us through your system for like while you're there, and maybe walk us through a tiny bit of the follow-up. And then we'll do some Q&A. Is that cool?
Okay.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to hear today that I didn't just mention? Okay, so get your questions ready. We'll do a little bit of that at the end. Candace, what did you want to add?
I just would like to know, Marie, if you talk about your mindset before you go into a listing appointment as well, please.
I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
So
Oh, wait, one more thing. I forgot to add.
Yeah.
One thing I've always admired about you, Marie, is you are quite possibly one of the most learning-based people I've ever been in contact with. You're always right there in the front row. You always got a big smile on your face. You're always taking notes. You are interested in getting better every single day. And honestly, I think that is probably one of the most important skills of a real estate agent. So I just want to make sure that people know we didn't just find some random person in the office to talk about listings. There's somebody who knows what they're doing.
thank you.
Okay, so tell us, start with a little bit of the mindset and the preparation.
Well, it's funny that we ask about mindset. I'm usually terrified before a listing presentation, even though I've done thousands. I always have a little bit of stage fright and butterflies in my stomach. Before I go to the listing, I have a pre-qualification script that I go through, and it's one that Dustin shared at the listing presentation class last week. Starts out with, if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home? And most of it, I always want them to say yes, but most of the time they say no. Then the second question is, are you planning to interview other agents for the job of selling your home? And then who are you planning on interviewing? Those are the two hardest questions for me to ask, because I want the answers to be, yes, we're going to list with you, and no, we aren't interviewing anybody else. But usually it's no, it's the opposite. It's usually, no, we're not planning to list with you, and yes, we're planning to interview other agents. So whatever they say doesn't matter.
Okay, did y'all hear that? That's a really important concept. Doesn't mean you like cancel the appointment or something.
No, whatever they say, it doesn't matter. And then the next half a dozen questions have
you put yourself on mute.
what do they want to ask for the house? What's the lowest amount that they'll take? What do they owe on the property? Have they ever thought about selling it themselves? And then ask them for them to describe the property to me. And that, again, whatever they say doesn't really matter. It's a way to gauge what kind of personality I'm dealing with. If they say it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house on a cul-de-sac, then I'm probably dealing with somebody who doesn't need a whole lot of fluff. But if they go on to describe the backyard and all the updates they've made, then it's probably somebody who's going to want to talk when I get there.
Oh, that's a really good observation. We actually haven't talked about that so much. That's almost a way of asking them the question of what is their disc, right?
Yes,
Is could you tell me a little bit about your house? And they're like, well, it's 4,327 and a half square feet. And the acreage is 0.42871. You better bring some graphs.
yeah, exactly.
But if they say, oh, it's a 4.2 on a cul-de-sac, next question,
Right.
you got to
Or
hide
if they say it's a 4-2 and I raised my children here and the bedrooms are painted pink and blue and purple, then I know I'm dealing with somebody who's more of an S type on the disc and likely has pictures of all the children framed on the walls, and they're going to want a whole different sort of presentation.
Okay, let's flush that out for 1 second. If they start talking about things that they love or people they like to be around, right? Remember from last week, that's a good indication that they generally help others before they help themselves, right? So and they generally have a little bit more of kind of they're coming from more of an emotional background, and so when you're presenting to them, you want to appeal to that side of their personality.
Right. Those are the people that will get you a glass of water when you get there. They'll fix you a sandwich if you ask them. They're helpful. They'll fill out the paperwork that you ask them to fill out right while you're sitting there.
Right.
Right.
They might even have a key already made for you.
Yeah.
By the
Which is
way, if they have a key already made for you, just pull out the paperwork.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't need to go through your whole presentation.
No, then
Set
you
a
do
few expectations, get the thing signed, and get out of there.
get out of there.
All right, I'm going to stop interrupting you.
It's okay. In fact, one of the questions I ask is, do you have a key that I can borrow for the lockbox? And if they say yes to that, then that tells me more than the automatic no that I get at the first question.
Okay, good.
And then I tell them I'm going to be sending over a package of information. We have a pre-listing package. Anybody that wants one, I'll be glad to share. That we have a runner that takes the pre-listing package and CMA to the house before I go on the listing appointment.
Why do you think Dustin has a runner? It's a
We
trick
get a
question, by the way.
We get a lot of very positive comments about having a runner or a field coordinator. Somebody who's a professional who shows up with this really professional looking paperwork in advance.
Right. There's more hands touching the file, which means there is a better likelihood that there won't be anything that's skipped.
Right. Right. And then I ask, will there be anybody else that needs that needs to be there? Any other decision makers, basically? Anybody else you need to consult with before making a decision? And then I ask them if they have any questions for me. And that's pretty much the pre-listing qualifications.
Okay, so then you get off the phone and you have this new data. What else do you do to prepare for the meeting?
Review the CMA. I look at the tax records, look to see if the house has been listed before. All the pretty typical stuff. I think the magic is in the pre-qualifying questions.
Okay.
And then it's time to go out.
Okay. So how does walk us through anything we need to learn about kind of the very beginning of the presentation?
First of all, don't be late. Be on time. My listing presentation starts with, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. We had an appointment at 3 o'clock and it's 3 o'clock. May I come in?
That's right.
So
because
I'm
notoriously real estate agents are late. And when you're on time or a few minutes early, you are separating yourself from your competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then once I'm in the house, I say that, this is a pretty exciting thing you're about to do, to list your house with me, whether they've told me they're going to list it with me or not. Like I said, I asked that question, but the answer doesn't matter. And then, like Michelle was talking about, and I'm not sure who else, but I don't look at the house first either, because for the pretty much for the same reason. If I'm not going to take the listing, then there's no sense in wasting my time looking at the house. So I usually say, that because they always ask, you want to look at the house? And I say, well, I'll tell you what, let's sit down and talk first, and then I'll look at the house.
All right, awesome.
So then I go pretty much right into the listing presentation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would determine whether or not you were going to take the listing?
Good question. Mostly it's whether or not they're people that I want to have in my life for the next 90 days, and price. And in the market, price is not as important because everything's selling for so much money anyway. But if they were $100,000 off and weren't willing to talk about it, then I would say something along the lines of, look, I appreciate your time. I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later. And just get out of there.
All right, let's say that phrase one more time.
I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later. Like, it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, the house is in such a condition that I know I can't sell it. I
Mhm.
was on one of those about 6 weeks ago, and the house smelled so badly of cigarette smoke and was such a mess. It was very much like a hoarder situation, and I knew I couldn't sell it. So I got out of there as fast as I could.
Okay.
Yep.
I
Leave
think
that to Duffy.
Okay.
I wanted to add something if I could, that
Yeah.
what Marie said, that, and I think she would agree with me, that showing up too early is as rude as showing up late. You know, if your appointment's at 11 and it was far away, so you left super early and you got there at 10 minutes to 11, I always wait in the car until I can be right on time, because that shakes people. You know, they're expecting you at 11 and suddenly you show up at the door at 10:50, and it just starts the appointment off on the wrong foot. So being on time really means being on time.
Good point.
I agree. I agree.
I want to make sure you highlight something. I don't know if you guys are noticing it, but I've been in, thousands of classes over my career, and I'm picking it up. You are incredibly scripted, right? Everything
yeah.
you're saying is stuff we've learned in bold and we've practiced for years. So walk us through why you have committed to, memorizing and internalizing the best practices of presentations and of your exchanges with people. Why have you chosen to do it that way rather than just wing it?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think I could wing it. I could wing it, but I wouldn't get anything accomplished.
Write that one down.
I could sit there and talk to them all day about the dog and their kids and where they went on vacation, and I'd never get the listing. Nothing good would ever happen. We probably have a cocktail and then I'd leave.
Oh, we'll be back in touch with you, Marie.
Yeah.
And then you never hear from him again.
Right. So it's really important when you go on a listing appointment that the seller knows that it's a listing appointment. Because if only you know that you're going there to see about getting a listing, then it's going to make the whole thing a lot more difficult. And I say that from experience. I've gone on appointments where the seller didn't know that my intention was to come in there to get a listing.
And that's the importance of asking those questions up front and saying something which you didn't say, but I'm sure you say it. You didn't say it today, but saying something like, just so you know, our meeting will last, 30 to 45 minutes or 45 minutes to an hour, just so you don't, wonder when I'm going to leave your house, and you can go about your day once I'm gone. Right.
Yeah, the last thing after, do you have any questions? So, our meeting should only take between 5 and 25 minutes.
See what
Is that
she's
okay?
good. Right. 5 minutes if you say, yeah, thanks for coming over, we're ready to sign the paperwork, and 25 minutes if you just let me run the show.
Right.
Another question.
Yes.
What other reason would there be for you coming over if it were not for an appointment? And I'm just asking because I haven't been on enough. Like, I'm still at the beginning stages of doing listing appointments. So I'm trying to figure out, just to make sure that the lines of communication are crystal. But why else would I be coming if I didn't want to?
Yeah, great question.
It is a great question. And if I hadn't asked all those qualifying questions, they might think that I'm just coming to take a peek at the house or something like that. Believe me,
To
I've
get
been
to
on
know them.
yeah, I've been on unqualified
Oh my gosh.
appointments. And I say it's crucial that the seller knows you're coming for a listing presentation.
Okay. Wow, good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so you have, so you're on time. You've essentially told the seller that you're on time.
Right.
You walk it now in the door and you know that you prefer not to look at the home first. So
Right.
knowing that, what do you do next?
Let's sit at the kitchen table or the dining room table. I try to seat the sellers if there's more than one so that they're in front of me and not on either side of me, because otherwise then it becomes as much of a listing presentation as it is a tennis match, because you're going back and forth and back and forth. So I try to seat them so they're in front of me or at right angles to me. And then I follow pretty much word for word the bold script. The only thing I do differently is I don't walk through the house first.
So that's exactly the same process and line of questioning and choreography is basically what Dustin did last week for the office. And it's basically exactly the same as Mike Ferry has taught for 50 years.
Right. Yeah. 3 goals for our meeting, 3 critical questions. Do you really want to sell the house? Will you price it to sell? And do you want me to handle it for you? And if they say yes to that 3rd question, then I'm all over getting them to sign the paperwork, and that listing presentation will be over in 10 minutes. I mean, I can be back at the office in 25 minutes
That's right.
with the listing.
Okay, what are the goals what are the 3 goals?
3 goals are to determine, I have to read it off the script. I take this with me.
Wait, you take your script with you?
Yeah, I take my script with me.
Why?
So, because if I might forget something.
I'm being sarcastic. I did
Right.
too. But it's okay. Just read it.
Read it right
You
off
could
the
say, hey,
paper.
I hope you don't mind. This is such a important decision for you. And this is such an important process. I just want to confirm that I don't miss anything. So I hope you don't mind that I brought some notes. Would that be okay?
Right. And nobody ever says, what, are you reading it right off the paper? They just don't say that. So the three goals are, we're going to review your motivation to sell this house now and agree on a price that will cause it to sell. We'll take a moment and I'll answer your questions. And then we'll decide tonight if you choose to work with me and if I choose to take the listing. Fair enough. So, it's right off the paper.
Yep.
It's not rocket science. And then there's 3 questions. Do you really want to sell this house? Are you willing to price it to sell? And do you want me to sell it for you? Or I usually say, do you want me to handle it for you?
Okay, so now they've said whatever they say. What's next?
Then what's next is we go over the CMA, which I've prepared, and they have a copy of it and I have a copy. So
you
we
brought
go-
them a copy?
No, the runner took them a copy when he took them the pre-listing package.
Okay, great.
So they've had a chance. I asked them if they've had a chance to look at it. Most of the time they have. We do a cloud CMA and bind it. It's all pretty fancy looking.
Okay.
So then we go through the CMA and I ask them which house looks most like theirs. I don't spend a lot of time on the CMA, honestly.
Okay. And
And then I start asking them for the business again.
give us an example of what that sounds like.
So based on the information we've seen on this CMA, it looks like we ought to price your house between $450 and $475. Is that
Ooh.
agreeable? Is that agreeable to you? I always give a range, because if I give them a price and I'm wrong, then I'm stuck with it.
So Maria, I have another question. Let's just say, well, they own the home and you haven't seen it. So before you see it, of course, you've done the CMA and you kind of have what it is that you think it should be priced at in your head. But then when you get there, let's just say it needs a lot of work. It's still a great home that can be, up there, in price. Do you determine the price after you do the walkthrough based on the quality then, or do you just stick with what it was in your head originally before you saw the home, even though you know that it is definitely going to need some work, but it's still something that can be priced at a higher price point?
Good question. I have been known to modify my numbers after looking at the house, but most of the time you can tell when you get to the door if the house is scrubbed clean and there are flowers on the front porch and you walk in the door. You've got to walk through certain rooms to get to the kitchen, and you can get a pretty good feeling for the. I've never been in a house where the public areas were great and then the back of the house looked like heathens live there.
Good point.
So, but yeah, I mean, you can, once you do a couple of these, you get pretty good at, you can sort of adjust what you're going to recommend in terms of price.
Now,
If it's way better or if it's way worse than your comparables.
One thing, and hopefully you guys are listening very, very closely, because the magic is in the little nuances about what she's saying and how she's saying it. But when she says, I start asking for the business again, and then she gave an example of how she did it. Did y'all hear what she said? She says, it sounds like we should list the home at 350 to 375. What do you think? Right. So she's presupposing, she's using some specific language skills that she's developed over time, right? She's presupposing that it's a we, right? That we're a team here. And the first stage of getting the listing is getting to be a team. Then as a team, we will decide what the best price and marketing strategy is so that it can get the maximum dollars. We don't want the seller to pick us based on the price we suggest. We want them to pick us on us, and then together we make those decisions.
Right.
Okay, so let's say, for example, they're like, well, you remember, Marie, we're interviewing a few other people. So how do you what direction do you take that?
That's a pretty common objection. And I say pretty much exactly what Diana Kokoska says on the in the Bowl listing presentation. And that is, by the time I get to this point in my presentation and I don't, and like you, my sellers are reluctant to sign, that indicates that maybe you're going to interview some other agents. And is that the case here? If
Yes.
they say yes, so we'll tell you what we can do. I know after you interview them, you're going to choose me anyway. So let's save everybody some time. Go ahead and sign my listing contract today. And I will, I'll call those agents and let them know that you wanted to meet with them, but you liked me. And I insisted that you list with me. And further than that, I'll even offer to split my commission with them when they bring me a buyer. When they bring us a buyer, we'll pay them half of our commission.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that, Marie. One of them is a really good friend of ours, so we're going to interview them. I appreciate you being assertive, but where do we go? Where do we go from here?
That's okay. I tell you what we can do is we can go ahead and sign the listing paperwork tonight, and I'll hold on to it. I won't do anything with it till you call me tomorrow or the next day and let me know that you've decided you want to list with me.
Okay, so I heard what's called an embedded command. Can you comment on that?
Embedded commands are great. They're words that you emphasize in a conversation that put an idea into the seller's head that they don't even realize it. There's oodles of embedded commands. Put me to work today.
List with me.
Right. Sell the house with me. All those kinds of things.
I apologize for interrupting. Yeah.
Okay. I'm moving. Hold on.
That way you can have some.
Okay.
Yep, I'll be right there. Just with all the.
Okay, start thinking of some questions, y'all. You can come back here if you want to.
I'm just across the way.
Okay.
I have
Okay,
one.
go ahead.
So if an objection before you get to the listing appointment, and I've got is they've asked for a CMA, whatever, blah, 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 and asked to come look at their home. But then it's
Right.
just like, I don't know if I want to list with an agent because the market's hot. Now I have 1,001 things that I can well, not that many, but it's fine. Like I can get through that because I kind of feel like once I have it, it's fine. But if they've already let you know that they're still on the fence with listing it only because of the market, do I keep pushing for it? Like, are you ready to sign the paperwork after I do my presentation? Because either way, it's practice for me. Either way, I'm learning, by
Right.
going on this appointment, but I kind of already know where it is that they stand.
Right. So I'm not sure I understand what your question is.
So
So
they
it
don't
sounds
wanna,
like,
they want to do a for sale by owner.
yeah, that's where I was headed. It sounds like whether they indicate at the beginning of the or during the pre-qualification that they're considering still marketing it themselves, a FSBO, and it sounds like you're alluding to even after most of the presentation has been completed, they still might be on the fence. How would you address that?
Well, I mean, at some point during the pre-qualification process, we had to determine motivation. And I would take them back to that motivation. It's going to take them longer to sell. Let's just say they are in a hurry. They've got to move and be in Chattanooga by the middle of October. I would emphasize those things. But ultimately, if the answer is absolutely we're going to for sale by owner, or we're going to interview these other 3 people, then I would make another appointment to stop back by like in a week and check and see how they're doing. Rather than call them and follow up, I'd make an appointment to come back and see them before I leave.
And you might ask for, hey, would you do me a favor and, before you make a decision, could we speak one more time? Right?
Sure.
Okay.
Could I meet with you one more time? And
Yeah.
another way to handle that is really to go back to a lot of the FSBO scripts and
Yeah.
even some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday morning, which is, yeah, look, if you put the home on the market, you probably will get an offer. I'm actually not worried about that at all. Neither should you. The issue is whether it's the best offer that you could get, right? If you put it as FSBO and it goes on 6 websites and everyone on your street knows, but no one else in the world knows, then you're going to have less exposure and you're going to get a lower price than if you tell the entire 8 billion people in the world by putting it on the appropriate traditional MLSs, which I could help you with, right? So with more
Yep.
exposure, you'll get better terms. And a lot of the risks that you could potentially take if you sell your home off market, you wouldn't have to take if you told more people about it, because you'd create more of a, an auction effect, basically. So it's basically just a creating doubt in their mind on their strategy. I completely understand your desire to, consider selling your home yourself. I do have a couple of concerns about that. Do you mind if I share them with you?
Yeah, can I add to that too, that anytime you get an objection, you have scripts for those objections, but ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions because you're helping them realize something on their own through their answers. Because a lot of times we try to compete with that. Well, this is what I think, and we're just playing tennis with that client. Whereas if you ask them questions, they're going to uncover the reality. And that's when people believe their reality, is when they've figured it out on their own. You're saying, oh, okay, let me ask you, have you sold a home yourself before? No. How do you plan to market the property? What would be your marketing strategy? And then they're thinking like, market? I have to market it?
I ain't got a
You
market
know?
strategy.
Yeah, it's like,
What's your social media plan?
right. And asking questions like, when I list a home, here's my 83 steps that I take. And, I have a team that's helping me get through these steps because it's a lot of work. Are you still working full time?
Or how many
You know-
steps are in your marketing plan?
Right. So you're working full time, right? You work 40 hours a week and then some, driving to and from. How will this affect your work-life balance when you're handling these 83 things that I would do for you? Letting them, then they're thinking like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to have time and marketing plan. And
Mhm.
so let me handle this for you. This is very time consuming. This is, a lot of money. This is, all of that. So you're
Right,
not
there's a-
arguing with them. You're letting them realize it on their own.
Right. Remember, Marie, that you could probably answer this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but people want two things, right? They want to look good and be right. Okay. So make them feel good. Give them a compliment. Hey, I love your shirt. I love what you did in that master bathroom. That's amazing. I love the tile you picked, or I love that color on the wall. Give them a compliment. Make them feel good. And be authentic about it. I'm not saying don't be authentic about it, but find something in the home you think is cute and say something about it. And then don't fight them on everything they say. Just present another angle to think about the process through.
Right. And ultimately with for sale by owners, the key is just time and following up, because 80 or 89 or 90% of them are going to give up anyway and hire an agent. So it's only a matter of staying in touch with them and constantly being of value to them in order to get another shot at the listing.
Okay.
Remember,
And they came
FISBO's
organically. Like
what, Ebony?
they came organically. They came from an open house. And I've kind of just been communicating, and he's the one who's like, hey, come look at my house. Can you do this? So everything was initiated on him. I was just staying in contact because I know eventually they wanted to purchase investment properties. So I was on that side of it. And then it's just like, well, you know what? Can you tell me, can you give me a CMA? Can you come look at my house? And then when I got the balls rolling, and I do this, like the moment that I hit go. And I kind of, I sent the pre-listing packet. I did all of that. I made sure I communicated. And then it was kind of like, whoa, well, we don't know if we want to list. It's just like, and then I also sent the contract just so they can see it before I got there. Like
I would probably not do the contract part, and you're not getting a free CMA. Sorry. I'll give you a free CMA, but we're going to meet to get it. I'm not emailing you nothing.
Yeah, I didn't send that.
And it sounds like the pre-qualification's missing there. What's got you, I'm curious, what's got you thinking about selling now? When do you want to sell? When do you want to close on this? Where are you going to move to? All those questions, because it sounds like he's
flirting,
I always,
to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say I always equate real estate to dating, and it doesn't sound like he's just flirting. It doesn't sound like he's looking
everywhere. In one
for
way,
a date.
about selling.
He's just trying to see
talking about
how much.
investment properties.
Yeah, he's got somebody. It's your time's valuable. You're $300 an hour. You making that CMA is your time, and you making that pre-qual packet is your time. Not to mention showing up is $300 an hour too. So
Great
is this
point.
guy serious? Is he going to sell something and close in the next 6 weeks? Because he's not, you got other things to do.
Well, that's exactly that's the point that Ebony, you asked about earlier, and Marie suggested earlier, which is make sure the seller knows you're coming over there for a professional appointment, right? If you were to walk up there and say, come see my house and we'll talk about investment properties, it's a little too casual for me.
Well, those are two different conversations. I think I've melted them together, but I'm not talking about investments because I know that's something 2022.
You don't know that. You haven't asked him enough questions to know that.
Well, that's what he said. So, but I do think that's where the lines are blurred, because I did the pre-qual, and he, like, his work schedule, him and his wife, oh gosh, it's horrible. And it's just like, it's not enough communication. And I'm like, Ebony, do you go over there and do it?
Well, you're in charge of that.
But here's the way that I'm looking at it too. Whether or not he goes with me, it's practice for me. And even though he may not, let me finish, even though I may not list with him, I still can be a great agent, and that still can be a referral for someone else. So I'm looking at it beyond him, because he said that he had a realtor years ago, and he did mention that, but I don't let that scare me. I'm more at the process of trying to build me. And if 2 hours helps me build me because I need the practice with the listings, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I have something to say, and I'm so sorry.
I would probably disagree with that a little bit. You go first,
Prac-
Michelle.
Okay, I'm so sorry because Marie, I know she has something she wants to say too. And I'm going to shut up.
It's like all the agents that have been in the business for 10 years
Yeah.
put off their mute button.
Yeah, I did. Ebony, I love you. Practice with me. Don't practice with this guy. Don't practice with the clients. Practice with me. Practice with Marie. You're going to learn so much more practicing a listing presentation with me than you're going to learn going on this listing presentation with him,
It's not
or
even
going on a listing
presentation.
presentation with a buyer or a seller that's not serious. Right? Don't you think that you would learn so much more practicing the listing presentation with me than an unserious seller? That's all I got to say.
Well, I would add to, like, if you're going over there for a listing presentation, then going to their home is appropriate. If you're going to talk about them being a real estate investor, you should be on neutral ground or your ground, meaning you come to the office to talk about that, or we go to a public coffee shop to talk about that. You're sketchy, and I'm not coming to your house to talk about investment property. I'm a little concerned about, are you trying to just spend some time with a pretty girl, or are you serious here? All right, you're up, Marie.
I agree with you. It all goes back to motivation, and I'm not sure what this gentleman's motivation is. A motivated seller is a beautiful thing. They'll pretty much do whatever you ask them to do. And the best way to find them is to talk to more people.
What do you mean by that?
I have a minimum contact quota that I have to do every day, and it's 20.
Wait, you track your numbers, Marie?
Every day, yeah.
Tell us more about that, please.
I report my numbers once a week to my team captain. I have to know how many contacts I made, how many appointments I set, how many I went on, and how many listings I took.
Why do you
track
think
those
that's
every week.
important? You've been
Because
in the business forever. Why does Dustin need to hold you accountable in that way?
Because this is a business. And this is my responsibility.
And Marie, can you share a little bit about how you are, I'm sure with your team, how you're generating 20 people a day? How are you finding them?
Great question.
Part of them is my database. Part of them is the database that Team Kimberly has developed over the last couple of years. And we've just added in for sale by owners and expireds and withdrawals. I'm pretty much working with it for sale by owners, and my ISA is working on expires and withdrawals. So, but it's not that hard to find 20 people a day.
And I know you, if you're off track, you don't change the goal, you change your activity. You're the type of person that'll go to Target in the middle of the night and go find somebody to talk to if you need another contact, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. And have you noticed, has there been time in your career where you were, can you think of a time in your career where you were really good at tracking and what kind of results you got versus a time in your career where you maybe were that was less important? And can you speak to what kind of how the results were different?
If I don't track my numbers and report them and have somebody that I'm accountable to, I won't do anything. I'll look like I'm doing things, but I'm really not doing anything.
Just by the way, just a side note, that's the difference between teaching and coaching. Marie doesn't need to be, I mean, she's learning based, so she'd go to a class anyway and be in the front row, but you don't need to be taught how to do a listing presentation. You just need to be coached.
Right.
Right. That's the difference. So, like, you know, there's a thought that says, oh, you know, Bill will teach me how to do a listing presentation, and then I'll just leave coaching because I can do it on my own. Maybe, but I think if you had more accountability, you'd stay on track more often. Make
I
sense?
agree. Yep.
All right, so wrap it up for us. How do you close? What's the very end of the appointment look like?
Well, if it goes well, it's the end of the appointment is with me smiling, telling them I'm going to take a quick look through the house through the eyes of a buyer. And why don't they get started on filling out this paperwork while I'm doing that? And I get a key and then I'm out of there.
Okay, and you're famous for a phrase which you used to put. I suspect you still have it. I didn't see it this morning, but you used to have a little note on your phone. What did that note used to say?
What happens next?
One more time.
What happens next?
And what does that mean? What's important about that?
Every time I talk to a seller, any client, at the end of the conversation, I go over what the next steps will be. So, and that's what happens next. So from my standpoint, what will happen next is Alex, our director of operations, will call the seller. It's going to call you, Mr. Seller, and go over this paperwork with you to make sure that we've got everything I's dotted and T's crossed on the seller's disclosure and the community disclosure. And any other documentation that we need, because our listings can't go live unless we have all those documents. It's just a rule of my team. And then after that, the next step will be the photographer. There's a handout in my pre-listing package that says what to do to get ready for the photo shoot. So I go over these things, but ultimately it's, telling them what the next steps are.
And then I'm just more curious than anything, but how do you, when you go through the home and you're taking notes on, where are the attic steps and does the home have landscape lighting and is the home, what direction does it face and where is the water heater gas or electric, or like a lot of those things that you're like, oh, I forgot to look at that. Like, when do you get all that recorded?
I get the seller to do that for me. The seller fills out the
Dual entry page?
the dual entry page, the parts that are relevant to him. We do obviously the public remarks and the private remarks and that sort of thing, but we have the seller fill out the parts about the checkoff boxes. Is it a gas stove? Is it an electric stove? Because honestly, I won't remember. I won't remember.
And at $300 an hour, quite frankly, that's not your job.
No.
Right, to go through the house and say, where are the attic steps around here?
Right. The purpose of the walkthrough is just to make sure the house is basically not functionally obsolescent. That bathrooms are where they're supposed to be and bedrooms are where they're supposed to be and that sort of thing.
And there's not any glaring maintenance issues that need to be taken care of prior to listing.
Yeah, like black mold on the walls or something.
Or broken glass, or huge stains on the carpet, or these kind of things.
Right.
Cool. What other questions do you have? Let's do like one or two more questions and we'll call it a day.
I have a question. At what point, when a house is in need of renovation, at what level of renovation do you have that conversation? Or, because I've done both. I've put houses on the market as is and they sell, and I've had homes that where the seller wants to have a bit more profit, and so they're willing to reno. But how do you handle that?
I don't get into renovation at all. I pretty much assume that the product that I'm looking at on the day that I'm there, that's the product I've got to sell.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have a small prescription that we write at the end of each listing, which is the 3 Ps: pine straw, pressure wash, and paint. But that's it. Other than that, I look at the house as something I'm going to sell as is in terms of what it looks like today.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach, because sometimes all the time we're hired to be the marketer and the salesperson in the transaction. Half the time we end up being a general contractor for a month before that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
So if they were going to do, let's just say that they wanted to paint their house, that was something that they had already decided that they were going to do. when you're doing your listing presentation and they decide to list with you, would you still get that key at that moment if it's going to take, let's say, anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks for that to be done? Or do you wait till it's closer towards you actually putting it, you going live?
Get it?
No, I get the key right then, because I'm probably not coming back.
I love it.
Right. You when they offer you stuff, get it.
Okay.
That is a sign of a commitment, and you accept signs of commitment. Because then they'd have to be like, hey, Marie, you know, I know you took a key last time, but we found this other person to list. They're not going to do that. Once they have given you a key, it's yours. Just don't
Yep.
botch it.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, one more question.
All right, and then I got to go to work.
All right, thank you. So I do get that reno question a lot. So, and I don't know. I don't know. Like, maybe I'm not experienced enough, but if you redo your bathrooms, I don't know how much it's going to cost, and I really am not prepared to tell you how much more you will be able to get. You know, so do I just got to get better, or how do you handle that question?
I feel the same way. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know what it'll cost. And I don't know that it'll make any difference in the price we get for your house.
Okay.
So unless they're just absolutely bent on doing some sort of renovation, I would say, you know, let's not use actual equity to chase potential profit.
Mhm.
Wow, I love it.
Love it.
Okay.
The other thing is, just as a complete side note, Liz, is if you're not familiar with a renovation project like that, it might not be, like we just suggested, it may not be critical that you understand that from a listing perspective, but you may be asked that question from a buyer perspective, and the buyer is going to expect you to be a little bit familiar. So if you look at this and you say, hey, I don't know much about bathroom renovations, then call up a bathroom renovation company and say, hey, I'd like to take you for coffee so I can learn more about your business. If I walk into a home that looks like this, how can I have a better feel for what the turn time is and the cost would be and these kind of things, just so you can familiarize yourself and have more intelligent conversations about the home, you know, the home renovation experience, particularly if you're working with an investor.
All right.
Okay, Marie, thank you. This was
You're welcome.
great. This has been recorded. If you want to share it with anyone else, I'm happy to facilitate that. For those that want to watch it and rewatch it, it will be on the YouTube channel later today. And Marie is in the office pretty much every day and has always been super helpful. But when she's on the phone, she's finding business. So respect her role as a lead generator, and keep in mind that's probably what you should be doing as well, right?
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Marie.
Thank you.
That's
Have a wonderful day,
amazing.
everyone.